What if I add that to the stage? Can you hear me now? How about now? Can you hear me at this point, I hope? Hello, hello. Okay, all right. Sorry about that. Thank you for catching me on that one. I was actually wondering if the audio was working. All right, let's head on back up here and start this all over again. So if you go to cilium.com/newsletter, then you are going to find the most recent newsletter. This episode is episode number 198. It is the post KubeCon and CloudNativeCon wrap up. I can't believe now we hear you twice, which is really fun because I don't know why that would be. Give me one moment here. Yeah, there's no sound or microphone here. I only have one mic on. Okay, maybe you have two browser tabs open, Jason, when you were trying to figure out the audio. I myself have done that, and then what you end up with is basically what you described. So thank you both for all of your help. So yeah, almost 200 episodes. Can't believe it. It's like so much EBFF coverage, so many things that we talked about. It's absolutely crazy. So uh, Bill is rounding out his year. Obviously, he was with me here in Atlanta for KubeCon, and most of our episode is going to be about KubeCon. But there's also the Linux Plumbers Conference coming up in Tokyo mid-December. So if you make it out to that, you can run into Bill there. These in-person events are always such a great thing. And it actually really, it struck me this week. I had met with several people, and I was actually watching a comedy bit by Trevor Noah, and he really pointed something out to me this week that like really stuck with me and became kind of a theme for me at this KubeCon. And that is that like, the people it's a I'm paraphrasing, but the people and the places that we spend time with, um, they kind of like they act like memory boxes, right? You put things into them, and they have this still picture, this captured image of who you are when you are around them. And the neat thing about coming to a show like KubeCon is that you get to spend time with those people again and be reminded of who you are, of who you were when you spent that time with them, right? And it's a really interesting thing because you can choose at that point to take those parts of yourself that you miss, those parts of yourself that maybe you have stepped away from for a little while or got distracted. You were working and you got into work, you got into family life, you got into politics. There's all kinds of these crazy stuff in our day-to-day lives that really can pull us away from our best selves when we're out there doing it. And it's such a gift to be able to spend time around people who remember you as a positive influence, or for which when you were with them you were happy, you had these different experiences that really reminded you of them. And being right there with them again, I think really gives you the opportunity to decide, you know what, let's I want to take that part of myself back and keep that part because I miss it. And so it's been a really good conference for me in that way. I got to run into several friends that I've known, gosh, now 10, 20 years, some of them. And it's just amazing to be reminded when you walk into a room and people are just super happy and you have the experience of remembering, like, yeah, that's right. I am actually having a generally positive effect. Or I remember when I was happy when I was hanging out with this person. Or I remember last time I visited Atlanta, it was this just incredibly beautiful time of year with all the fall leaves falling. You just have that whole experience. You pick any one of those experiences and choose to remember it. So, like I said, lots and lots of good stuff in the news. Lots of really good stuff on eBPF. It's really kind of coming along. Um, there's a great write up on IPv6 with Cilium up at the top. There is a couple of other good ones, and I did actually want to share this article right here, which is continuous NVIDIA CUDA profiling and productions. This is written by some good friends over at Polar Signals. And Polar Signals, if you haven't heard of them, is a company that is focused on continuous profiling in general. But Tommy over there had actually written up a whole thing on leveraging CUDA, or understanding profiling for CUDA workloads as well. Definitely check that out if that's something that you're interested in looking more into and understanding like where your GPUs are spending their time. Definitely check that out. Very cool stuff. Shout out to all of those folks. I did actually get some of those folks are the people that I've known for 20 years. So I did get to I did get to see a bunch of them here at KubeCon, and that was pretty great. Somebody has written a BPF trace language server, pretty fun. And I think that is all I was going to really talk about in the labs. There's actually, so Core or compile once, run everywhere is a way of actually running eBPF programs, and we leverage it in Cilium and also in Tetragon. And basically the idea is that you can write portable code, and that portable code can be run by an agent or by a BPF compiler on any number of systems. And because it's portable code, it just references like function names, right? So you could say, I want to hook the file open syscall, right? And by just referencing the file open syscall, you have to understand that, like, depending on the depending on the Linux kernel that you're hooking this into, that file open syscall might be a different integer in the API as exposed by that Linux kernel. This could be because it's a different hardware architecture, it could be a different version of the Linux kernel, it could be a variety of different reasons. And part of actually making eBPF portable is making it so that you can actually have a list of functions to integers in the in basically debug symbols for the Linux kernel available to you. And the way that this is actually represented on your Linux kernel, why don't we just pop open a window and I will show you. All right. So the way this is represented, if you're on a Linux box and you want to know, like, is my Linux box, compatible with portable eBPF programs, then you can take a look at syskernel BTF. And this file, if it is there, is actually kind of that list, that mapping of function name to integer that your BPF programs will use when they are compiled. And that will be different. That mapping will be different for different hardware. It'll be different for different versions of the Linux kernel. All of that stuff will be reasons why these things are different. You can also do BPF tool help. Oh, looks like I didn't actually get them. Let's go ahead and add it. I'm actually running here. I'm running it's like a pretty standard OEM kernel. So sudo apt install Linux OEM tools 614 10. Hmm, funny. Okay, well, that's a challenge for another day. I don't know why that package is not there, but if you can use BPF tool to actually interact with the BPF hooks and everything that are available to you. So it can be done. I just apparently can't do it today for whatever reason. I'll figure it out though. All right. Events coming up. Obviously, we just this week had a ton of events. We actually started with a set of events on Sunday. So Saturday actually is the first day of KubeCon for me, and I helped host the one of my favorite conferences, which is Rejects. And if you have not heard of Rejects, you should definitely hear of Rejects. It's just an incredible conference, and it's what's referred to as a B-side conference. And a B-side conference is a conference where if you were trying to get your talk into the main conference and it did not get accepted, then you could submit the same talk to a B-sides conference, and frequently will get they will get accepted, but they go through the same CFP process, so there is no guarantee. But these talks are, in my opinion, some of these talks are actually going to be some of the better talks. And whenever I'm listening to them, sometimes I'm like, wow, like I do think that this talk would have really given a lot to the actual main conference, but at the same time, you can really connect with the idea that like the number of talks submitted to KubeCon is just a crazy outlandish number, and some of those talks, despite how good they are, just are not going to be accepted because there's just so many of them. So definitely check these out. These are just more amazing talks. If you have not already seen them, they are out there, and you can actually find them on YouTube. So if you go to the Cloud Native Rejects YouTube website, the two that are up here at the top under live, there's a theater one and a dining room one. One will be a little bit longer than the other, right? Like 5:56 and 3 hours and 20 minutes. So I know they're still doing a little work to make sure that the entire stream gets posted, but these two are available. You should definitely check them out. And they are going to show you the entire talks. So for myself, the way I started out, I came in on Friday. I didn't have any travel issues, and I was grateful for that. I went straight to the on Saturday morning. I woke up and went into the Historical Medical Center here in Atlanta and hosted that. And the way that that worked out was that I was actually the mediator for the theater event for like the first half of the day, and then I passed it off to one of my wonderful cohorts, and then I came back and did the lightning talks, and I had a closing keynote, and so in which I actually shared the idea that I was already sharing with you earlier. So lots of great talks in there this year, including some of my favorites, the Catch Me If You Can story, which is a great Kubernetes escape story by Jed Salazar and James Peterson, really showing you just how easy it is to escape Linux, really, more than Kubernetes, because the attack was really specific to a Linux server. The other thing I noticed is that there's been a recent really big push in the Dragonfly project to both get the word out more about what is happening with it and also to actually make it more consumable, so make it easier to work with. So Dragonfly, if you've not heard of it, is a tool that can actually help sync large bits of data between different endpoints. And so frequently one of the use cases here is actually leveraging Dragonfly to handle image distribution in Kubernetes. So when you pull an image down, it can make that image available to all of the other nodes in your cluster using a variety of different mechanisms to actually copy that over. So very, very cool stuff. And what this solves for is like, say I don't know, you're making use of KubeVirt, right? KubeVirt is one of the more recent um, really great uses of such a technology because KubeVirt is the idea that you're going to run a VM inside of a pod inside of Kubernetes, right? So you have your Kubernetes clusters with all your Kubernetes APIs. You extend it with KubeVirt. Now you have a VM API, and you can create VMs just like you would create pods. You can create machine deployments just like you would be able to create regular deployments, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, the disk it's because it's a VM, can actually kind of get a lot bigger because you're going to have the entire operating system on there. You're going to have, perhaps have some pre-installed software on there, and you want to make sure that that disk, the VM disk, is made available to all of your endpoints. We follow the same mechanisms to download a VM disk as we do to pull down a pod image, right? And so, yeah, that distributed mechanism, being able to actually pull down a large file, say 20 gigabytes or whatever, and make it available on all of the nodes very quickly, means that the time it takes you to get to VM startup could be significantly shorter than it is. Another great talk I saw was the inspiring identity using Spire for verifiable container isolation. VM class secure with Hyperlight. That was actually done by um, so the Microsoft folks. They're actually building kind of POSIX into Hyperlight. Hyperlight, if you haven't heard of it, is a pretty cool project. I definitely recommend checking it out. It's a sandboxing technology, very similar in some ways to uh, it's a sandboxing technology that would be good for things like hosting WASM binaries and that sort of stuff. But definitely check it out if it's something that's of interest to you. Um, they continue to make it better and more improved, and it's a very, very cool thing. Has a very, very fast startup, etc. So lots of good stuff there. So that was my Sunday. That was my Saturday, and then on Sunday we hosted one of our big events, which was really fun. And because Sunday is typically or within this KubeCon, was the day for the Contributor Summit, where we had several people talking. It was really great, because we don't just contribute to Cilium and Tetragon, we also contribute to Kubernetes. So if we look up CNCF Contributor Summit, sorry, Maintainer Summit, boop, there we go. Then we can actually see the schedule. And from inside of here, we'll see many friends doing many great things, like the keynote and opening welcoming remarks by Natalie Vlaco, who works here worked with me here at Cisco. We had several other wonderful folks in that opening keynote. There have been a lot of really great talks, a lot of real focus on all of the great stuff. So like there was a great load lifecycle working group talking about how to handle a load lifecycle. This broke across a variety of interesting areas. One of the ones that actually I thought was pretty interesting, a pretty interesting session, was the idea of being able to do. There are two that I want to call out. One is the new eviction API, trying to make the eviction API a little bit easier to work with, and the other one was by Mr. Oh, but I don't think this actually showed up here. This next shout out was by Luxus, but I don't think he did it here. Yeah, he did it at the main conference. So the main conference schedule. Search. So was a fascinating talk. So this was Micah and Lucas, and they were doing a presentation on conditional RBAC, which if you haven't seen it, the slides are here actually. So you can click through the slides and check them out if you're interested in understanding more about what they were talking about. But the idea of conditional authorization is it's now a KEP. So it's actually they're working on trying to get this into the Kubernetes project. But let me give you kind of a use case for why you would need it, right? So within um, within most technologies that leverage a daemon set. So, for example, Cilium installed inside of Kubernetes. The only way to authenticate Cilium so that it can create all of the CRDs and everything that it needs to interact with the Kubernetes cluster that it's a part of and handle all of that stuff directly is to give it permissions, like RBAC permissions, to interact with those things. When I give Cilium RBAC permissions to update a Cilium CRD, I give the same set of permissions to all of the Cilium agents, regardless of which node they are present on. And even though some of these resources that are created by the Cilium agent are node specific, any Cilium agent can manipulate any record on any with relation to any other node, because at the moment, that's the way that RBAC is limited. RBAC can't give me a more specific permission set. It can only say you have the ability to read, write, or modify specific resources by name, but can't actually do like a conditional thing where I could say by name and associated with a node that this particular service account is a part of, right? So ideally, what I'd like is to make it so that when I give Cilium credentials, you can't use the Cilium agent to manipulate resources that are not specific to the node where that Cilium agent is living. What I want is something that's actually very similar to the node authorizer. The node authorizer inside of Kubernetes does basically the same thing, right? The node authorizer is when a kubelet is trying to manipulate, say, a pod object inside of the Kubernetes API, it's limited in its capability to only manipulating those pod objects that are resident on the node itself. It cannot modify or delete or do anything to other pod objects that are not scheduled to the node where the request from whence the request is coming. It's limited in that way. It's a great piece of security technology that actually that was initially implemented to help slow down or stop east-west or lateral movement within Kubernetes. And I want that for the credentials that I have to give to Cilium as part of a daemon set. Same basic idea. So if you haven't seen this talk, it's going to be public here pretty soon, and you're probably going to see me talking about it on Twitter. It's a great write-up, and it's actually very cool to see how this all works. So definitely check that out. Let's close this down. Now, the other talk that I thought was pretty great and saw quite a few really great, I saw a ton of feedback on was Chemo in the Fast Lane. And this was accelerating qubit networking with eBPF. Now, this speaks of a couple of different things, which are pretty awesome. One of the things that it actually speaks to is within Cilium, or actually, I should say, in the Linux kernel, a lot of our folks that are actually working on eBPF here at Isovalent are like full-time kernel maintainers of eBPF within the Linux kernel. Daniel Borkman is one of them, and Daniel is actually responsible for a lot of the really early work and also a lot of the current work in eBPF in the Linux kernel. One of the things that he's been working on, and it's not just his own invention, this is actually all part of all part of the open source work that's actually associated with the Linux kernel itself. But one of the pieces that has recently been moving forward is Netkit. If you haven't seen anything on Netkit, I do recommend going to isovalent.com blogs and doing a search for Netkit. Where is it at? Might be for networking for Kubernetes. Hmm. All posts. All right. Let's use some Google Foo. There we go. So this is published in 24 and updated later that same month. But this document actually really gets into like kind of a new paradigm for uh, Linux kernel networking. So this really changes how and what we can do inside of the Linux kernel. There's been lots of really great marginal gains about like how we're actually leveraging that kit and those sorts of things. I can actually put the link. I can put the link right here in the chat. And pop back over here. But Netkit is a way of actually having a BPF native networking stack. And so if you want to see the slide deck for this one, I'll also copy this link and I'll put that in the chat. But they get into great detail about how all of this works, right? And so I think they did a very good job of the write-up, and it really highlights a few different things. The first, it highlights what NetKit is. NetKit is a BPF native network device that could be a replacement for or an upgrade from the VEITH networking device that so many of us are familiar with inside of Linux kernel switching or connectivity, right? So like if you create a pod, you're getting a VEITH pair. The VEITH pair is going to describe how it works. It's the same thing for KubeVirt. KubeVirt follows that same model, which is probably not a very efficient model. And this is actually where things like NetKit come in, right? So lots of great ways to enhance Kubernetes networking for VMs as well as pods as it relates to NetKit. So definitely check that out if that's of interest to you. I think it's going to be, I mean, I know that it was a great talk and I saw lots of people giving me lots of great feedback on it. I also have lots of great pictures of the booth area, including our wonderful crew that were. I almost always miss these photos, and well, quit that. All right, there we go. I almost always miss these photos, but yeah, we had an incredible crew with us this year. As always, I'm usually running around doing other things, and it always makes me a little bit sad that I miss them. But we had several talks at our booth. We had a great setup for speaking. We had several book signings. My friend Ray, one of my cohort in Europe, was actually doing a lot of book signing. We had Nico doing book signing. We had Mr. Soggy doing book signing with Mr. Joe. Lots of really great stuff out there. Had several giveaways. Had some great talks in the day zero events. So lots of great events there. Big shout out to Hemant, who actually did a great talk on parsing DNS more natively in eBPF without the need for a proxy. So yeah, lots of great stuff out there. Overall, it was an incredible week, and we really had um, a wonderful time. This picture is our amazing events crew. This is Erica, Cornelia, Valerie, and the amazing Carla, who has been a part of our events crew. And actually, Carla is pretty responsible for actually managing a lot of the events that we do externally as well. So if you've been to, there's several parties at KubeCon that she's also a part of. So SIG train parties, lots of great stuff. One of our one of the people who's just joined us recently, Mr. Christian Hernandez, was actually out there with us. We had a few company dinners, a few great get-togethers. And then I also wanted to share some of these other photos um, from our events and from other things that happened this week. So this is a great photo that actually really highlights something that's very important to us. We are hiring. We're looking for global SEs, not just SEs here in the US, but everywhere. We're also looking for more sales folks. So if that's a thing that you're interested in doing, you can go to isovalent.com/careers and you'll be able to see the job openings for Isovalent. So come check us out. This was an awesome call out. So this was Cilium being shouted out in the Airbnb talk. So Airbnb was talking about like a lot of the works that they're doing to actually um, use Kubernetes to host the Airbnb website and all of the other tools there. And Cilium was actually shouted out as part of the stack. So that was pretty awesome to hear. We have our dinners. This was a big gathering of folks who were actually doing contributing to Cilium. So this was the contributor summit photo that actually happened at the Microsoft building. So great stuff there. This was the final takeaway photo of rejects. And so this included everybody that actually managed to stick around long enough to be a part of our conversation there. And it was really fun. There is an incredible aquarium here in Atlanta. And if you ever get a chance to come, I definitely recommend it. There's some really incredible fish. The Wiz folks, our isovalent booth at the Day Zero event. Lots of the great stickers for this year, for this one. We actually created some new ones, like the stuff you see here on the right, like "You shall not pass" and those sorts of things. We had our evening event was amazing, and it did actually include marshmallows that were stamped with the isovalent logo, which I thought was hilarious. And people were not just using fires for those things, but also trying to toast their marshmallows with the area heaters, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. We had this at the rooftop of the Hilton Garden Inn, and it had a really nice mixed space. There was like space inside and outside, and just an incredible group of people coming through for all of that. So, big shout out to everybody who decided to join us at the party on Wednesday, and also who joined us at events and uh, and just came by to say hi or discuss or catch up with us or discuss what challenges that they were having with Kubernetes networking security, observability, or even Linux networking security and observability. So it was just a huge turnout. We had an incredible week. I cannot stress enough how awesome it was to see all of the engagement and to really feel like we continue to be just right at the forefront of this incredible community. The last thing I wanted to share with you was if you go to YouTube and you look up the CNCF and you go to videos and latest, you're going to see as these videos are posted, you're going to see them come up here, right? So they already have the FluxConf out there. They were working on the Envoy Conf. The next one will be the CiliumConf probably, but we're going to see more and more of those talks come up and be present on this list. So if there are, and it won't be just the day zero events. It'll also be all of the recorded talks from KubeCon. So you'll likely see me talking about this in the next couple of days on Twitter, or perhaps next time we meet here on Echo Office Hours, where I'll get to actually provide you links to the recorded talks that we did at KubeCon this last year. In the meantime, I do hope that you have an absolutely amazing weekend. I'm still here in Atlanta, so I'm going to go explore the aquarium again, and I am then going to probably head on back home to California on Saturday, and hopefully with very little traffic delay. But yeah, just an incredible week, just an incredible opportunity to be, a part of it, and then so many labs done. It was pretty amazing. If you go to isovalent.com/labs, you can see all of the labs that we made available, and that was pretty incredible. Um, Let me actually turn my sharing off for just a second, and I will bring up another page, and we'll see if ah, I can't show it, unfortunately. But yeah, we had maybe next time when I actually come up here, I'll be able to give you a view into how many people did labs at KubeCon and came away with badges. It was just an incredible experience, like I said. We're always, I know everybody, I speak for everyone at Isovalent when I say it's just such an incredible opportunity to contribute to this community, whether it is contributing to the Linux kernel, contributing to Kubernetes, contributing to Cilium or eBPF. It's just such an incredible opportunity to continue to be a part of such an amazing and global community. So thank you all so much for making our experience at KubeCon just the best ever. And I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful weekend.